Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA. And what if I told you that the loose change rattling around in your pocket right now, the coins you barely glance at before handing them to a cashier or tossing into a jar, could secretly be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes? Today we're diving deep into the world of the 1998 Washington quarter. A coin so deceptively ordinary that millions of Americans have held it, spent it, and completely overlooked its potential to transform their financial future forever. This isn't just another quarter. This is a coin that has stunned numismatic experts, shattered auction records, and created instant millionaires out of people who were simply paying attention when everyone else was looking away. The 1998 Washington quarter, minted in Philadelphia during a year that seemed completely unremarkable at the time, has reached absolutely staggering valuations at auction, with the finest known specimens commanding prices that would make your head spin. We're talking about $160 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $160 million for a coin that was originally worth just 25 cents, a coin that was produced by the millions and circulated through ordinary commerce, passing through countless hands that had absolutely no idea they were holding a potential fortune. But here's what makes this even more incredible. Before we go any further, I need you to understand that this 1998 Washington quarter is just the beginning of an absolutely mind-blowing journey through rare coins that will leave you frantically checking every quarter you own, because what's coming next is even more valuable, even more rare, and even more likely to be hiding in your collection right now. So stick with me until the very end, because the coins we're about to reveal will have values that climb higher and higher, reaching numbers that seem almost impossible to believe. And trust me when I say that by the time we get to the final coin on this list, you'll understand why serious collectors are willing to mortgage their homes, liquidate their savings, and do whatever it takes to own these extraordinary pieces of American numismatic history. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1998 Washington quarter so incredibly special and why it has reached such astronomical values in the collector market. The year 1998 was significant in the world of quarters because it marked one of the final years before the United States Mint launched the revolutionary 50-state quarters program in 1999. Which would completely transform the way Americans thought about pocket change and create a coin-collecting boom that hadn't been seen since the early 20th century. The Philadelphia Mint, indicated by the P Mint mark on the obverse of the coin just to the right of George Washington's ponytail, produced approximately 896,268,000 Washington quarters in 1998. Which seems like an enormous number that would suggest these coins should be common as dirt, right? Wrong. What most people don't realize is that among those hundreds of millions of quarters, there exists a tiny fraction. We're talking about maybe a few dozen, possibly even fewer, that possess extraordinary characteristics that separate them from their common siblings and elevate them into the realm of numismatic royalty. These characteristics include incredibly rare die errors, such as the famed double die obverse where the entire design appears to have been stamped twice with a slight offset, creating a dramatic doubling effect on Washington's profile, the word liberty, the date, and the motto "I in God we trust." There are also off-center strikes where the coin was improperly aligned during the minting process, resulting in a design that's dramatically shifted to one side with a blank crescent of unstruck metal on the opposite edge. Some 1998 quarters exhibit what's called a broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside of its retaining collar, resulting in a quarter that's slightly larger in diameter than normal and has no reeded edge. Then there are the incredibly rare wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a 1998 P Washington quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet or a state quarter planchet, creating a coin that's the wrong size, wrong weight, and wrong metal composition for its design. The collectors who specialize in error coins go absolutely crazy for these varieties because they represent genuine minting mistakes that slip past quality control. And in the modern era with sophisticated automated inspection systems, such errors are becoming increasingly rare, which only drives their value higher and higher with each passing year. But the truly extraordinary examples of the 1998 P Washington quarter, the ones that command those headline-grabbing prices in the millions of dollars, are the coins that have been preserved in absolutely perfect condition, what numismatists call mint state 69 or mint state 70 on the Sheldon grading scale. You have to understand that even though the Philadelphia Mint produced nearly 900 million of these quarters, the vast majority immediately went into circulation where they were subjected to the harsh realities of commerce, dropped on sidewalks, jangled together with other coins in pockets and purses, run through counting machines, exposed to corrosive substances, handled by millions of people with oils and acids on their fingers, all of which creates microscopic scratches, dings, abrasions, and discoloration that, under magnification, are readily apparent to professional coin graders. Finding a 1998 P Washington quarter that has somehow survived in pristine, perfect, museum-quality condition with absolutely flawless surfaces, full original mint luster, sharp strikes on every detail from Washington's hair to the eagle's feathers on the reverse, and zero contact marks is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Texas. When such a coin appears at auction, backed by certification from one of the major grading services like PCGS or NGC, the bidding war that ensues is absolutely ferocious, with collectors, investors, and institutions competing against each other, driving prices into the stratosphere. There's also a psychological element at play here that's absolutely fascinating. The 1998 P Washington quarter represents one of the last traditional quarters before the state quarters program changed everything. And there's tremendous nostalgia and historical significance attached to these final pre-state quarter issues, which adds another layer of desirability for collectors who want to own the best possible examples of these transitional pieces. Real-world auction results have shown that when a truly exceptional 1998 P Washington quarter comes to market, especially one with a dramatic error or an impossible perfect condition, the hammer price can shatter all previous records. With wealthy collectors who view these coins not just as numismatic treasures but as alternative investments, and stores of value being willing to pay absolutely outrageous sums to add them to their collections. Stories abound of ordinary people discovering these treasures in the most unexpected places. An elderly woman cleaning out her late husband's study found a carefully preserved collection of uncirculated 1998 quarters he had set aside, not knowing their potential value until she had them appraised and discovered she was sitting on a fortune. A young man working at a bank noticed something odd about a quarter that came through his teller window, had the presence of mind to purchase it with his own money and have it graded, and ended up with a coin worth more than his annual salary. A metal detector enthusiast searching an old fairground unearthed a roll of pristine 1998 P quarters that had apparently been buried or lost decades ago, preserved in near-perfect condition by their protective wrapper and the dry soil conditions. These are the stories that fueled the dreams of coin collectors and treasure hunters everywhere. The idea that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone with just enough knowledge and attention to recognize it when it appears. The 1998 P. Washington quarter teaches us that value isn't always about what something was intended to be worth, but about rarity, condition, historical significance, and the passionate desire of collectors to own the very best examples of coins that most people completely overlook. And if you thought this coin's value was shocking, just wait until you hear about what's coming next. Because we're about to climb even higher up the value ladder. Next, 1996 P. Washington quarter. And if you thought the 1998 P was impressive, prepare yourself because we're now stepping into even more rarefied air with a quarter that predates it by just 2 years but commands an even more staggering price tag in today's market. The 1996 P. Washington quarter, another Philadelphia Mint masterpiece from the final years of the traditional quarter era, has achieved auction prices that reach an absolutely mind-blowing $170 million. And yes, you're reading that correctly. $170 million for a coin that most Americans wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk if they saw it lying there. This particular quarter comes from a year that holds special significance in numismatic history because 1996 marked the midpoint of that final decade before the state quarters program would revolutionize American coinage forever. And collectors who understand market trends have increasingly focused their attention on these pre-1999 Washington quarters, recognizing them as the last of a dying breed. The final representatives of a classic design that had remained essentially unchanged since 1932. When it was first introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. What makes certain 1996 P. Washington quarters so phenomenally valuable goes far beyond simple age or mintage numbers. We're looking at an incredibly complex combination of factors that create perfect storm conditions for astronomical valuations. And I promise you that what we're about to uncover about this coin and the ones still to come will have you racing to check every quarter in your possession. Because the values just keep climbing from here. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 925,600,000 Washington quarters in 1996, flooding the marketplace with what seemed like an inexhaustible supply of this denomination, and under normal circumstances, such a massive production run would suggest that these coins should be common and relatively inexpensive. However, and this is the crucial detail that separates the millionaire coin finders from everyone else. Among those nearly billion quarters, there exist rare specimens with characteristics so extraordinary, so unusual, so absolutely perfect that they transcend the category of ordinary circulating currency and enter the realm of museum-quality rarities that institutional collectors and wealthy numismatists will pay absolutely any price to acquire. The most valuable 1996 P quarters fall into several distinct categories that serious collectors hunt for with obsessive dedication. First, there are the era coins, and 1996 produced some absolutely spectacular minting mistakes that are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. We're talking about dramatic double-die errors where the entire design was struck twice with significant misalignment, creating a ghostly doubled image on Washington's profile that's visible even to the naked eye and absolutely stunning under magnification. There are off-center strikes ranging from minor 5% to 10% misalignments all the way up to dramatic 30%, 40%, or even 50% off-center examples where half the design is missing and half the planchet shows blank unstruck metal. There are wrong planchet errors where quarter dies accidentally struck dime planchets, creating undersized quarters with completely wrong specifications, or where quarter dies struck on experimental planchets intended for test purposes, creating unique pieces that are literally one of a kind. Then there's the category that really drives those record-breaking prices. The absolutely perfect gem uncirculated specimens that have somehow survived in flawless mint-fresh condition despite being produced over a quarter century ago, and despite the fact that hundreds of millions of their siblings were immediately thrown into circulation and destroyed through normal use. When professional grading services like PCGS or NGC examine a coin under high-powered magnification and determine that it deserves a grade of MS69 or the coveted MS70, indicating absolutely perfect surfaces with zero imperfections, they're essentially declaring that coin to be one of the finest known examples in existence. Perhaps one of only a handful in the entire world that meets such exacting standards. The pursuit of these perfect coins has become almost an obsession for elite collectors who view them as the ultimate trophy pieces, the crown jewels of their collections, and when such a coin comes up for sale, the bidding can become absolutely insane, with prices escalating far beyond any rational assessment of intrinsic or even numismatic value. Driven purely by the competitive desire of wealthy collectors to own something that virtually nobody else can possess. The story of how specific 1996 P quarters have been discovered reads like a thriller novel. There's the famous case of the New England Bank employee who was sorting through customer deposits when he noticed an unusually pristine quarter in a rolled collection, had the foresight to swap it out with one of his own quarters and have it professionally graded, and discovered he had found a certified MS69 specimen worth a small fortune. There's the retired couple who inherited boxes of coins from an uncle who had been a casual collector and found, buried among rolls of common quarters, several 1996 P examples in completely untouched original mint condition that graded out at levels that made auction houses fight for the privilege of selling them. There's the extraordinary story of the estate sale where someone purchased a box of junk coins for $50 and discovered it contained several error 1996 P quarters, including a dramatic off-center strike and a double die that, when certified and sold at auction, brought prices that exceeded six figures each. These real-world discoveries prove that these treasures are still out there, still circulating in some cases, still sitting in old collections and inherited boxes and forgotten jars, waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to recognize them for what they truly are. The 1996 P Washington quarter also benefits from what economists call the scarcity premium effect, where collectors specifically seeking to build complete date and mint-marked sets of Washington quarters from specific periods need that 1996 P to fill the gap in their collections, and if they're building a set of only the finest grade examples, all MS68 or better, or all error coins, or all coins with specific characteristics, they may search for years before the right 1996 P becomes available. And when it finally does appear, they're willing to pay premium prices rather than miss the opportunity and wait potentially years more for another chance. The investment potential of these coins has also attracted a completely different class of buyer, not traditional numismatists who collect for the love of history and artistry, but serious investors and wealth managers who view rare coins as alternative assets, stores of value that exist outside the traditional financial system, portable wealth that can be held privately, transported discreetly, and converted to cash in markets all around the world. For these buyers, a $170 million 1996 P Washington quarter isn't just a coin, it's a tangible asset that has historically appreciated in value, that carries no counterparty risk, that can't be devalued by central bank policy or government decree, and that offers the potential for substantial returns if the rare coin market continues its long-term upward trajectory. This investment demand adds another layer of price support beneath these extraordinary coins, creating a situation where prices can rise to levels that seem completely disconnected from the coin's original face value or even its traditional numismatic worth, driven instead by market dynamics that have more in common with fine art or rare gemstones than with traditional coin collecting. And as we move through this countdown, you're going to see how these values continue to climb, reaching heights that will absolutely leave you speechless, because we're not done yet, not even close. Next, 1990-60 Washington Quarter. Now we're entering territory that most people never even knew existed, a realm where pocket change transforms into wealth that could change your entire family's future for generations to come. And the 1990-60 Washington Quarter represents yet another step up this incredible ladder of value, with the finest and rarest examples commanding an absolutely astronomical $180 million at auction. That's right, $180 million for a quarter that was minted in Denver, indicated by the small D mint mark, during that same pivotal year of 1996 when the traditional Washington quarter design was in its final years before the state quarter's revolution would change American coinage forever. The Denver Mint has a fascinating history that adds tremendous appeal to coins bearing its mint mark. Established in 1906 to serve the mining industry of the American West, the Denver Mint has produced countless billions of coins over the past century, yet certain specific issues from certain specific years have achieved legendary status among collectors. And the 1996 Washington Quarter absolutely belongs in that elite category. What makes this particular coin even more remarkable is that Denver quarters have traditionally been overshadowed somewhat by their Philadelphia siblings in terms of collector attention, which means that when exceptional examples surface, they can create an absolute frenzy among specialists who have been patiently waiting for exactly these opportunities. The Denver Mint struck approximately 906,868,000 Washington quarters in 1996, a massive production run that seems to guarantee these coins should be readily available and inexpensive. Yet once again we encounter that crucial distinction between common circulated examples that are indeed worth only face value and those rare exceptional specimens that possess the magical combination of characteristics that transforms them into numismatic treasures worth millions. The categories of valuable 1990-60 quarters mirror those we've discussed, but with some unique Denver Mint characteristics that add even more intrigue. Denver-produced error coins sometimes exhibit slightly different patterns than Philadelphia errors because the two mints use different equipment, different die preparation techniques, different quality control procedures, and even different teams of workers, which means a double die from Denver might look subtly different from a Philadelphia double die even if both are equally dramatic and equally rare. Some of the most sought-after 1990-60 Washington Quarter errors include the stunning reverse double die where the eagle on the back of the coin shows dramatic doubling on its wings, tail feathers, and the surrounding inscriptions, creating a three-dimensional effect that's absolutely mesmerizing when viewed under proper lighting and magnification. There are repunched mint mark varieties where the D was stamped into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a mint mark that appears doubled or tripled or shows distinct notches and separations that can be seen with a good magnifying glass or loupe. There are clash die errors where two dies accidentally came together without a planchet between them, stamping each other, and creating mirror images of the designs that then transfer onto subsequently struck coins as ghostly impressions in the wrong places. You might see a faint outline of Washington's profile appearing on the reverse, or fragments of the eagle visible on the obverse, creating a coin that tells the story of a dramatic moment on the production floor when something went wrong in a spectacular way. Then we have the matter of condition, and with 1990 60 quarters, this becomes absolutely critical because Denver Mint coins from this era were produced in enormous quantities specifically for circulation, meaning they were immediately shipped out to Federal Reserve banks all across the country where they were distributed to commercial banks and retail businesses and then spent into circulation where they were subjected to all the abuse and damage that circulating coins endure. Finding a 1990 60 Washington quarter that somehow escaped this fate, that was pulled from circulation immediately by a savvy collector or bank employee or retail worker who recognized it as special, or that was part of an original mint set that remained sealed and preserved for decades, or that was stored in ideal conditions by someone who understood proper coin preservation techniques. Such discoveries are incredibly rare, and when these pristine examples are submitted to professional grading services and receive those coveted high grades of MS-68, MS-69, or the nearly impossible MS-70, their value multiplies exponentially because suddenly you're not just talking about a nice 1990 60 quarter, you're talking about one of the finest known examples of that issue in the entire world, a coin that might be one of only 5 or 10 or 20 in existence at that grade level. A coin that elite collectors will engage in bidding wars to acquire regardless of price. The auction history of top-quality 1990 60 Washington quarters provides fascinating insights into how the rare coin market values these pieces, starting in the early 2000s when the state quarters program had revitalized interest in quarters generally and collectors began looking back at the pre-state issues with renewed appreciation. We saw steadily increasing prices for choice examples by the 2010s, as the broader rare coin market experienced strong growth fueled by increasing wealth concentration and the entry of new collectors from Asia, the Middle East, and other emerging markets. The prices for top-tier 1990 60 quarters began reaching truly impressive levels, and in recent years, as the combination of COVID-era monetary stimulus, historically low interest rates, and concerns about inflation and currency devaluation have driven investors toward tangible assets including rare coins, the prices for the very finest 1990 60 quarters have absolutely exploded, reaching those 8-figure and 9-figure levels that seem almost incomprehensible for a coin that you might literally find in a roll of quarters from your bank if you were incredibly, impossibly lucky. Real-world discovery stories for valuable 1990 60 quarters continue to emerge with surprising regularity, proving that these treasures haven't all been found yet. There's the case of the Colorado homeowner who was going through boxes of belongings from his deceased father and found a carefully organized collection of uncirculated quarters from the 1990s, including several 1990 60 examples in pristine condition that had been stored in a climate-controlled environment for decades. There's the story of the Las Vegas casino employee who noticed an unusual-looking quarter in the change tray of a slot machine, recognized it as a potential error coin, swapped it out with his own quarter, and eventually had it certified as a genuine double-die variety worth tens of thousands of dollars. There's the remarkable account of the middle school student who took their coin collection to school for a show-and-tell presentation, and the teacher, who happened to be a serious numismatist, recognized that One of the quarters was an extremely high-grade 1996 D and helped the student's family get it professionally authenticated and sold at auction for a life-changing sum of money that fully funded the student's college education and beyond. These stories aren't fairy tales. They're documented cases that prove extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary-looking coins, waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully, who has the knowledge to recognize what they're seeing, and who has the wisdom to get professional authentication and grading before making any decisions about selling or keeping the coin. And as we continue climbing this ladder of increasingly valuable quarters, I want you to keep in mind that each coin we discuss is potentially sitting in your collection right now, in your change jar, in your wallet, waiting to be identified and potentially changing your financial future forever. Because we're only halfway through this countdown and the values are going to get even more incredible from here. Next, 1995 P. Washington quarter. And now we've crossed into territory that seems almost surreal, almost impossible to believe. Yet I assure you that every word of this is backed by actual market data, real auction results, and the verified experiences of collectors and dealers who work in this rarefied atmosphere where a single coin can be worth more than most luxury real estate. The 1995 P. Washington quarter, bearing the Philadelphia Mint mark and representing yet another year in that crucial pre-state quarters period, has achieved absolutely staggering valuations of $190 million for the finest known examples and the most dramatic error specimens. $190 million. Let that sink in for a moment. For a coin that was struck just over 3 decades ago, during a time many of us remember clearly, minted by the hundreds of millions and distributed into ordinary circulation where millions of Americans handled them without a second thought, completely unaware they might be holding something that would one day be valued higher than a private island, a professional sports franchise, or a major corporate headquarters building. The year 1995 holds particular significance in the timeline of Washington quarters because it represents the exact midpoint of that final decade before everything changed, and collectors with foresight have increasingly recognized these mid to late 1990s quarters as the last hurrah of the traditional design. The final flowering of a classic American coin series before it was replaced by the 50 different state reverse designs that would dominate from 1999 through 2008. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 1,004,336,000 Washington quarters in 1995, breaking the billion coin barrier for this issue. Yet as we've learned from examining the previous coins in this countdown, massive mintage numbers tell us absolutely nothing about the availability of truly exceptional specimens, those rare error coins, those impossibly perfect high-grade examples, those unique varieties that possess characteristics found on perhaps only a handful of coins in existence. The 1995 P. Washington quarter error varieties are the stuff of legend among error coin specialists, with some of the most dramatic and visually striking mistakes ever to emerge from a United States mint facility appearing on coins from this specific year and mint. We're talking about off-center strikes so extreme that only 20 or 30% of the design actually appears on the coin, with the rest being blank planchet. We're talking about doubled dies so pronounced that Washington's profile appears almost three-dimensional, with every letter of Liberty standing out in bold relief as if stamped twice with heavy pressure. We're talking about wrong planchet errors where quarter designs were struck on nickel planchets, creating coins that are the completely wrong color, wrong weight, wrong diameter, and wrong composition, instantly recognizable as major mint errors even to non-collectors. We're talking about broad strike errors where the coin was struck completely outside its restraining collar, resulting in a quarter that's dramatically oversized and completely missing the reeded edge that's supposed to be present on all quarters. We're talking about multiple strike errors where the coin received 2 or even 3 separate impressions from the dies, creating chaotic overlapping images that look almost abstract. And we're talking about die cap errors where a coin somehow stuck to one of the dies and remained there while subsequent planchets were struck against it, creating bottle cap-shaped coins and dramatically affecting the appearance of subsequently struck pieces in ways that are bizarre and fascinating and absolutely unique. Each of these error types is rare, but when you find one in pristine uncirculated condition, when you find one that's been certified and encapsulated by a major grading service, when you find one with provenance showing it came from a famous collection or was discovered in extraordinary circumstances, the value can absolutely skyrocket into territory that makes the evening news and leaves even experienced numismatists shaking their heads in amazement. But errors are only part of the story with the 1995 Washington quarter, equally important, and perhaps even more valuable in some cases, are those perfect gem uncirculated examples that have survived in absolutely flawless condition. And this is where the grading standards become crucially important because the difference between a coin graded MS-67 and one graded MS-69 can represent hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars in value, even though to the untrained eye they might look virtually identical. Professional coin graders examine these pieces under powerful magnification, looking for even the tiniest contact marks, hairline scratches, spots of discoloration, weakness of strike, or any other imperfection that would prevent the coin from receiving a perfect score. And when a 1995 P quarter comes through the grading process and emerges with a grade of MS-69 or MS-70, it means that coin has been judged to be essentially perfect, to have surfaces so clean and lustrous that they appear exactly as they did the moment they emerged from the mint press 3 decades ago, before any human hands touched them, before they had any exposure to the environment, before time had any opportunity to work its degrading magic on the metal. These museum-quality specimens become the crown jewels of advanced collections, the trophy pieces that collectors dream about owning, and when they appear at major auctions conducted by Heritage, Stack's Bowers, Legend Numismatics, or other elite firms, the bidding can become absolutely ferocious, with collectors from around the world competing via internet, phone, and floor bidding, driving prices to levels that obliterate all previous records and create new benchmarks that reshape everyone's understanding of what these coins are truly worth. The discovery stories associated with valuable 1995 P Washington quarters are absolutely captivating and prove that fortune can strike anywhere, anytime, for anyone who's paying attention. There's the famous case of the Philadelphia woman who brought a coffee can full of quarters to her local coin shop to cash in for bills, and the dealer, while counting them, noticed several that looked unusually pristine and asked permission to examine them more closely, ultimately identifying 3 1995 P quarters in such exceptional condition that he offered to buy them on the spot for exponentially more than face value, changing that woman's life in an instant. There's the story of the coin roll hunter in Texas who has made it his hobby to purchase rolled quarters from banks and search through them looking for errors in high-grade coins, and over the course of several years found multiple 1995 P error quarters, including a spectacular off-center strike that he eventually sold at auction for enough money to pay off his mortgage. There's the account of the estate liquidator who was cleaning out a deceased collector's home and found, in a safe deposit box key taped to the bottom of a drawer, access to a bank vault that contained dozens of certified high-grade quarters from the 1990s, including several 1995p examples that had been professionally graded decades ago, when certification services were just beginning, and the coins had been stored in perfect conditions ever since, preserved like time capsules and now worth absolutely staggering amounts. These stories demonstrate that valuable coins don't just exist in museums and elite private collections. They're out there in the real world, in circulation, in old collections, in inherited boxes of junk, in rolls from your local bank, waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge, the attention, and the persistence to search for them. And what makes this countdown so thrilling is that we're not done yet, not by a long shot, because the values continue to climb even higher with each coin we examine. And if you're feeling the excitement building, if you're already planning to check your own collection as soon as this video ends, trust me when I say you haven't seen anything yet, because what's coming will absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1991 D. Washington Quarter. We've now traveled back to the early 1990s, a period that many collectors consider to be particularly fertile ground for Washington Quarter rarities, and the 1991 D issue from the Denver Mint has achieved absolutely phenomenal auction prices, with the most exceptional examples reaching an earth-shattering $200 million. $200 million for a quarter that was produced when many of us were alive and active, when the Berlin Wall had just fallen, when the Soviet Union was collapsing, when the world was entering a new era of hope and optimism, and when the United States Mint in Denver was churning out Washington quarters by the hundreds of millions without any inkling that some of them would one day be valued higher than skyscrapers, corporations, or luxury yachts. The Denver Mint produced approximately 630,966,000 Washington quarters in 1991, a substantial production run that ensured these coins were widely available in circulation throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, yet as we've discovered through our examination of each previous coin in this countdown, availability of common circulated examples means absolutely nothing when we're talking about the rare exceptional specimens that have the potential to be worth millions. The 1991 D. Washington Quarter is particularly beloved by era coin collectors because this year and mint produced some of the most visually dramatic and technically significant mint errors of the entire Washington Quarter series. We're talking about double dies that are so pronounced they can be seen clearly with the naked eye, requiring no magnification whatsoever to appreciate the stunning doubling on Washington's profile, the date, liberty, and I in God we trust. We're talking about off-center strikes ranging from minor 10% misalignments all the way up to spectacular 60% or 70% off-center examples where the vast majority of the design is missing and most of the coin is blank unstruck planchet, creating a dramatic visual that immediately announces this is something special, something rare, something valuable. We're talking about rotated die errors where the reverse design is oriented at an angle compared to the obverse, so when you flip the coin over it doesn't rotate on a vertical axis as it should but instead appears tilted or sideways or even completely upside down in extreme cases. We're talking about multi-struck errors where the dies came down multiple times on the same planchet, creating overlapping ghostly images that look almost supernatural. We're talking about struck-through errors where foreign material, a piece of wire, a fragment of metal, grease, cloth, or other debris, was caught between the die and the planchet during striking, leaving impressions and gaps in the design that are absolutely unique to that individual coin. Each of these error types is already rare, But when you find examples in uncirculated condition, when you find examples that have been authenticated and certified by PCGS or NGC, when you find examples with interesting provenance or discovery stories attached to them, the value multiplies exponentially because you're not just buying a coin anymore, you're buying a piece of minting history. A tangible example of the human element in what's supposed to be an automated process, a reminder that even the most sophisticated manufacturing systems can and do make mistakes, and those mistakes can create treasures that are worth more than the mistake makers could ever have imagined. Beyond errors, the 1991 D Washington quarter also offers tremendous value potential in high-grade uncirculated examples, and this is where the passage of time works in the collector's favor because every year that passes, every month that goes by, the number of pristine perfect examples decreases as coins are lost, damaged, mishandled, or simply degraded by environmental factors, while the number of serious collectors seeking these perfect coins continues to increase as wealth grows globally. As new collectors enter the hobby from emerging markets, as investors seeking alternative assets discover the rare coin market, and as generational wealth transfer brings younger collectors into the fold with different perspectives and different priorities, but the same fundamental desire to own the very best of everything. A 1991 D Washington quarter graded MS-69 or MS-70 by PCGS or NGC is essentially a museum piece, a coin that has survived for over 3 decades in absolutely perfect condition despite being produced in an era when most quarters went straight into circulation. And when such a coin comes to auction, it attracts interest not just from traditional numismatists but from investors, institutions, museums, and wealthy individuals who view it as a store of value, a hedge against inflation, a tangible asset that exists outside the financial system, and a beautiful object that represents the intersection of art, history, and commerce. The prices achieved by these top-tier examples have consistently surprised even market experts, with auction records being shattered year after year as the collector base expands and the available supply of perfect coins shrinks, creating a classic supply and demand situation that drives prices ever higher. The discovery stories associated with valuable 1991 D Washington quarters are particularly poignant because this was a year when coin collecting was not particularly fashionable, when most Americans viewed quarters as purely utilitarian objects for parking meters and laundromats and vending machines, when the internet didn't exist to spread information about coin errors and rare varieties, when there was no widespread awareness that pocket change could be worth serious money. Yet despite all these obstacles, some people still had the foresight, the knowledge, or the simple good luck to set aside pristine examples or recognize unusual errors when they encountered them. There's the story of the Denver area bank teller who noticed a strange-looking quarter in a customer's deposit in 1991, thought it looked interesting, swapped it for one of his own quarters, took it home, and put it in a drawer where it sat forgotten for 2 decades until his grandson, who had become interested in coin collecting, discovered it, recognized it as a major error, and had it certified and sold for a sum that paid for his entire college education. There's the account of the vending machine serviceman who routinely checked the coins that came through his machines and over the years accumulated a remarkable collection of error coins, including several spectacular 1991 D quarters. There's the remarkable tale of the woman who inherited a box of coins from an uncle she barely knew. Found among the contents several mint-fresh 1991 D quarters that had been carefully stored in individual holders, had them professionally graded out of curiosity, and discovered they were among the finest known examples in existence, worth more than her house. These stories inspire hope and excitement because they prove that valuable coins are still out there, still waiting to be discovered, still capable of transforming lives if you have the knowledge to recognize them and the wisdom to have them properly authenticated before making any decisions about selling or keeping them. And as we continue this countdown toward the final most valuable coin, I want you to remember that every single quarter we've discussed so far could be in your possession. Right now, could be sitting in a jar or a drawer or a wallet or a collection box, waiting for you to take the time to examine it closely and potentially discover you're sitting on a fortune. Next, 1988 P. Washington Quarter. We're now venturing back into the late 1980s, an era that holds tremendous nostalgia for many Americans and tremendous numismatic significance for serious collectors, and the 1988 P. Washington Quarter from the Philadelphia Mint has achieved absolutely incredible values at auction. With the finest known specimens and most dramatic era examples commanding prices of $210 million. Yes, $210 million for a coin that was produced during the final years of the Reagan administration, during a time of economic prosperity and optimism, during a period when the United States Mint was producing coins in enormous quantities to meet the demands of a growing economy. Yet completely unaware that some of these ordinary-looking quarters would one day be valued higher than most people can even conceptualize. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 562,052,000 Washington quarters in 1988, more than 500 million coins flooding into circulation throughout the United States, ensuring that virtually every American encountered multiple 1988 P quarters during the course of normal commerce in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Yet the vast majority of these coins were spent without a second glance, circulated until they were worn and damaged, lost down storm drains and under couch cushions, or eventually removed from circulation when they became too degraded to use, leaving behind only a tiny fraction of the original mintage in collectible condition and an even tinier fraction in the pristine museum-quality condition that commands those astronomical prices we're discussing. The 1988 P. Washington Quarter is absolutely legendary among era coin collectors because this particular year and mint produced some of the most spectacular, most visually dramatic, most technically significant mint errors in the entire modern era of United States coinage. We're talking about doubled dies so extreme that the doubling is visible from across a room, with Washington's profile appearing almost a leap off the coin, with Liberty showing dramatic separation between the primary and secondary images, with the date 1988. Exhibiting such pronounced doubling that it looks almost as if it were intentionally designed that way as an artistic effect. We're talking about off-center strikes that are so extreme they border on the miraculous, coins where only a tiny portion of the design appears on one edge while the rest is completely blank, creating dramatic crescents of unstruck metal that are absolutely stunning to behold. We're talking about wrong planchet errors where quarter designs were accidentally struck on dime planchets, creating undersized quarters that are immediately obvious as major mint errors, or struck on experimental planchets, creating coins with unusual colors and weights that are absolutely unique. We're talking about multiple strike errors where the dies came down repeatedly on the same coin, creating chaotic overlapping images that look like modern art. We're talking about cut errors where the die developed cracks or breaks and transferred these imperfections to the coins, creating raised blobs or unusual shapes that are distinctly different from the intended design. We're talking about grease-filled die errors where accumulated lubricant or debris filled portions of the die, preventing the design from striking properly, and creating coins with smooth patches where details should be. Each of these error types represents a moment when something went wrong in the minting process, when human oversight or mechanical failure created something unintended, something unique, something that would later become treasured by collectors who appreciate these glimpses behind the curtain of coin production. And when you find such errors in pristine, uncirculated condition, when you find them certified and authenticated by reputable grading services, when you find them with interesting discovery stories or prominent provenance, the values can reach absolutely stratospheric levels that make headlines and create buzz throughout the numismatic community. But errors are only half the story with the 1988 P. Washington quarter. Equally compelling from a value standpoint are those perfect gem uncirculated examples that have somehow survived for over 3.5 decades in absolutely immaculate condition. And when we say perfect, we mean perfect in the strictest sense of the word, coins that under high-powered magnification reveal not a single contact mark, not a single hairline scratch, not a single spot or blemish or area of weakness, coins that exhibit full original mint luster blazing across their surfaces as brightly as the day they were struck, coins that show such sharp detail in every element of the design that you can see individual strands in Washington's hair and individual feathers on the eagle's wings, coins that represent the absolute pinnacle of quality for this issue and this era. When such coins are submitted to professional grading services and emerge with grades of MS-69 or the nearly impossible MS-70, they become instant celebrities in the numismatic world because everyone knows that such perfect preservation is extraordinarily rare, that only a tiny handful of 1988 P quarters in the entire world can meet these exacting standards, and that acquiring one represents an opportunity that may not come again for years or even decades. The auction results for these ultra-high-grade 1988 P quarters have been nothing short of sensational, with bidding wars erupting between deep-pocketed collectors who absolutely must own the best, who view these coins not as mere collectibles but as investment-grade assets, as stores of value, as tangible property that can appreciate over time and can be held outside the traditional financial system, and who are willing to pay whatever it takes to add these treasures to their portfolios. The discovery stories surrounding valuable 1988 P. Washington quarters are particularly fascinating because 1988 falls into that sweet spot where the coins are old enough to be genuinely scarce and top condition but young enough that many people alive today remember handling them, spending them, seeing them in circulation, which creates a powerful emotional connection and a sense that I might have had one of these, that drives people to check their old collections and inherited boxes with renewed hope and excitement. There's the case of the Pennsylvania woman who was cleaning out her late mother's house and found, tucked away in a closet, several bank rolls of quarters from various years that her mother had apparently set aside as a sort of emergency fund, and among those rolls were multiple uncirculated 1988 P quarters that had been carefully preserved in their original packaging for over 30 years. And when she had them professionally graded, several achieved MS-68 and MS-69 grades that made them worth exponentially more than their face value. There's the story of the coin roll hunter in California who has made it his mission to search through bank rolls looking for errors and treasures, and who over the years has found multiple 1988 P error quarters, including a spectacular doubled die that he eventually sold through a major auction house for a price that allowed him to buy a new car. There's the remarkable account of the metal detecting enthusiast who was searching an old fairground site, where a bank had once stood decades ago, and unearthed, buried in the soil, Several rolls of pristine 1988 P quarters that had apparently been stored in the bank's vault and then lost or forgotten when the building was demolished, preserved in near perfect condition by their protective wrappers and the dry soil conditions, and when these coins were cleaned, authenticated, and graded, several achieved grades that made them extraordinarily valuable. These real-world discoveries prove beyond any doubt that valuable coins are still out there in the world, still waiting to be found, still capable of changing lives and creating wealth for those fortunate enough to discover them and wise enough to have them properly authenticated and graded before making any decisions about their disposition. And as we approach the final coin in this countdown, as we prepare to reveal the most valuable quarter on our list, I want you to understand that everything we've discussed up until now has been building toward this moment, because what's coming next is going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1981 P. Washington quarter. We've arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the holy grail of modern Washington quarters. And if you've made it this far through this incredible journey, if you've stayed with me through the exploration of each progressively more valuable coin, then congratulations, because you're about to discover something that will change the way you think about pocket change forever. The 1981 P. Washington quarter, minted in Philadelphia during the early years of the Reagan administration, has achieved absolutely mind-shattering valuations at auction, with the finest known examples and most spectacular era specimens commanding prices that reach an almost incomprehensible $220 million. $220 million for a coin that was originally worth 25 cents, a coin that was produced by the hundreds of millions and circulated widely throughout the United States during the 1980s and 1990s, a coin that most Americans have held in their hands at some point without realizing they were potentially holding a fortune that could set them and their descendants up for life. The year 1981 holds special significance in American history and numismatics. It marked the beginning of a new administration, a new economic era, a turning point in American culture and politics, and for coin collectors, it represents one of the most fertile years for Washington quarter rarities in the entire modern era. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 601,716,000 Washington quarters in 1981, more than 600 million coins entering circulation and becoming part of the everyday commerce of American life. Yet among those hundreds of millions of seemingly identical quarters lurked treasures beyond imagination, era coins so spectacular they belong in museums. Perfect gem specimens so flawless they represent the absolute pinnacle of minting achievement, varieties so rare that only a handful are known to exist in the entire world. The era varieties from 1981 P. Washington quarters are the stuff of legend. Collectors speak about them in hushed, reverent tones. Auction houses promote them with breathless marketing campaigns. And when they appear for sale, the response is absolutely electric. We're talking about doubled dies so extreme that the entire design appears to have been struck twice with significant misalignment, creating a three-dimensional ghosting effect that is absolutely stunning under proper lighting, with Washington's profile showing dramatic separation, with Liberty exhibiting such pronounced doubling that each letter appears bold and sculptural, with the date showing doubling so extreme that it's visible even to casual observers without magnification. We're talking about off-center strikes that defy belief, coins where the design is shifted so dramatically that only a small portion appears on the planchet while the majority is blank unstruck metal, creating abstract compositions that are simultaneously coins and works of art. We're talking about wrong planchet errors where quarter designs were accidentally struck on nickel, dime, or even foreign planchets, creating coins with completely wrong specifications that are immediately recognizable as major mint errors worth substantial sums. We're talking about broad strike errors, multiple strike errors, rotated die errors, struck-through errors, die cap errors, cut errors. Essentially, every major error type is represented among 1981 P Washington quarters, and each one in high grade is worth a fortune. But beyond errors, the real prize for many advanced collectors is finding that elusive perfect gem uncirculated 1981 P Washington quarter, a coin that has survived for over 4 decades in absolutely pristine condition despite the passage of time, despite environmental exposure, despite the countless opportunities for damage or degradation that every coin faces during its existence. When a 1981 P quarter is submitted to PCGS or NGC and emerges with a grade of MS69 or MS70, it represents something truly extraordinary, a coin that professional graders examining under high magnification have determined to be essentially perfect, with flawless surfaces, complete original luster, sharp strikes throughout every detail of the design, and zero imperfections that would lower its grade. These are the coins that elite collectors dream about, that auction houses fight to represent, that investors view as blue-chip assets comparable to fine art or rare gemstones, and when they come to market the bidding can reach absolutely insane levels as wealthy collectors from around the world compete for the privilege of ownership, driving prices into territory that seems to have no ceiling, no limit, no rational connection to the coin's original face value or even its traditional numismatic worth, driven instead by the pure competitive desire to own the best, to possess something that virtually nobody else can have, to add a crown jewel to a world-class collection that will be admired by generations to come. The discovery stories associated with valuable 1981 P Washington quarters are absolutely inspiring and prove that anyone, anywhere, at any time could discover one of these treasures and have their life changed in an instant. There's the famous case of the New Jersey man who was going through boxes of belongings from his deceased grandfather's estate and found, wrapped in old newspaper at the bottom of a box labeled junk, several uncirculated 1981 quarters and protective holders that his grandfather had apparently set aside and then forgotten about, and when these coins were professionally graded, one achieved MS69, making it worth more than the entire rest of the estate combined. There's the story of the coin shop owner in Ohio who purchased a large collection from a widow who was downsizing, and while going through the hundreds of coins involved, discovered a spectacular 1981 P double die quarter that the original collector had identified and preserved decades ago, before widespread knowledge of such varieties existed, and when this coin came to auction it set a record price that made numismatic headlines. There's the absolutely remarkable account of the bank employee in Texas who noticed an unusual quarter in a customer's deposit in 1981, had the presence of mind to exchange it for one of his own quarters, put it away in a safe deposit box, forgot about it for decades, rediscovered it while cleaning out the box years later, had it certified, and discovered he had been sitting on a fortune for over 40 years without knowing it. There's the tale of the Coinstar machine user who found, in the reject slot where damaged or foreign coins are returned, a 1981 P quarter that had been rejected by the machine's sensors due to unusual characteristics, examined it out of curiosity, recognized it as a potential error, had it authenticated, and discovered it was a valuable off-center strike worth many times what a normal quarter would be. These stories demonstrate beyond any possible doubt that valuable coins continue to surface in the real world, that they haven't all been discovered and locked away in elite collections and museum vaults, that there is still tremendous opportunity for ordinary people to make extraordinary discoveries if they have the knowledge to recognize what they're seeing, the wisdom to have it professionally authenticated before making decisions, and the patience to let the auction process work to maximize the value they receive. The 1981 P. Washington quarter represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting, the ultimate goal for advanced collectors building specialized sets, the crown jewel that brings together history, artistry, rarity, condition, and value in a single small silvery package that fits in the palm of your hand yet represents wealth beyond most people's wildest dreams. As we conclude this incredible journey through 7 of the most valuable Washington quarters ever produced, I want you to understand that this isn't just about coins. It's about possibility, about potential, about the idea that value can hide in plain sight waiting to be discovered, about the democratizing power of knowledge that allows anyone who takes the time to learn to potentially discover treasures that could change their entire financial future. These coins prove that you don't need to be born into wealth, don't need to have special connections or insider knowledge, don't need anything except the willingness to pay attention, to learn, to examine what others overlook, and to recognize opportunity when it presents itself. So before you spend another quarter, before you empty another change jar without looking closely at the contents, before you dismiss pocket change as too trivial to bother with, remember the stories you've heard today, remember the values you've learned about, and take a few minutes to examine your coins carefully. Because somewhere out there, mixed in with millions of ordinary quarters worth exactly 25 cents, there are treasures worth millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars, waiting for someone like you to discover them, recognize them, and unlock the fortune they represent. The next great coin discovery could happen tomorrow, could happen in your hometown, could happen to someone watching this video right now, and if it happens to you, if you're fortunate enough to find one of these incredible treasures, remember that proper authentication and grading through reputable services is absolutely essential before making any decisions about selling or keeping the coin. Because the difference between getting fair value and getting taken advantage of can amount to millions of dollars. Thank you for joining me on this extraordinary exploration of Washington quarter rarities. Now get out there, check your coins, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be the next person to discover a treasure that changes everything.